for the district. The request for the finance committee is, given the hard times that people are having, and I've heard about it all over, I would request that we could find a way to perhaps delay the implementation of the water system improvement maintenance fee for maybe 6 months until people can get their work back. Perhaps at your next committee meeting, you could look at that to see if we could make it easier on our public, on our ratepayers. I will add, however, that these monies will be spent towards keeping the system repaired and up to date and able to serve people even during times of having this shelter in place. So it's very important that we do that. This district has had a policy for as long as I've been aware of the district, and I moved into the district a long time ago, and a proud history of fixing things before they break, of fixing things before there's a catastrophe, instead of waiting until there's an emergency, which costs more. We are very responsible in using our money, and the water needs for the district are of paramount importance. So we need to keep our pumps and wells and sanitation and all of those things that keep a water district running up to date and in good repair. And that takes having funds on hand and a dollar reserve so we can run the district very financially responsibly. So that is, but hopefully we can find a way to delay the implementation of this. If we did not put this fee into effect, we will have, or if we postpone it and have to do notice again and not have the Prop 218 vote, there are several things that will happen. One, in listening to the financial reports, I hear people talking about coming inflation. That would probably increase the calculations of what we need to ask from each household. And so the cost per year would probably go up. The other is that we have already spent $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 on investigating this, researching it, analyzing it, presenting it. We presented it quite a few times to the at board meetings, and that would be money that would be tossed away if we had to redo the 218 process. So I think the happy medium is for the Finance Committee to explore a delay in the implementation of the 218 notice. But we do need, remembering that while we've all been sheltering in place, we've been able to turn on our taps and have good, clean water, sanitized water, and some of the best water around. So I think it's important that we continue the tradition of Montara water and sanitary. And in that same tradition, I've been hearing comments of rumors that are going on in the ratepayers of things that are not necessary, that are not true. Some of them are half truths, some of them are complete fabrications. Because this district has always had a policy of being very responsive to the public, I would ask Clemens and the board if we could consider perhaps in September, when the weather is good and when hopefully the shelter in place is relaxed significantly, that we could have a meeting where we could invite the public and answer those questions. rather than doing it in a newsletter where we're not quite sure how things are read or if they're even read, this would allow people who have concerns to come and talk to the board directly. And we could answer your questions and your concerns and have a good dialogue. It sounds like there are people with some kind of interest in not having a good water system. And I think that I don't know why that would be, um, but I believe we should address these concerns with facts and for the whole community. So again, I look forward for us to being able to do that in September, October. So moving right along to oral comments. Do I see any oral comments from the public? These are for items not on the agenda. Let me scroll this way.
We have
Farbstein wanted to talk.
Yes, we have Joel would like to make a public comment.
Oh, okay. Hello, Joel. You're on mute. So take yourself off mute.
Thank you.
And thank you.
There we go. Oops.
It might say Catherine Farbstein, but thank you. So I'm in Montara.
It does, but it's the great spelling. So.
Okay. Right. Okay. I'd like to start off by reading some recent headlines. Jobless toll hits stunning heights. Others are stimulus checks are in the mail. For some, the money is a lifeline. Also, people across the country no end is in sight for coronavirus-related job losses. Those last two are today's headlines. The US government has deemed the coronavirus pandemic such a catastrophe that they're returning $1,200 in economic impact payments to taxpayers. The pandemic has hit home too. Locally, the Half Moon Bay Review reported relief package is a lifeline for many facing May bills. Moss Beach resident Sadie Jackson, for instance, said she's using her stimulus check to help pay for rent and groceries. According to a Gallup poll, 35% of adults intend to use the checks to pay bills, and another 16% said it would go toward essentials like food or gas. And quote, that's some good cash for some hardworking, self-employed small business people and people maybe not covered by unemployment, unquote. I'm here to call on MWSD to delay its water service reliability charge for at least 1 year. I know it won't go on property tax rolls until later in the year, but more than half of the government stimulus checks have not been issued yet, 160 million, and won't be received until later in the year. For MWSD to take nearly half of the $1,200 stimulus checks for what has been described as a non-urgent, non-essential assessment, instead of having local residents use the money on critical household needs during this unprecedented time, is the wrong thing to do. Now's not the time for wish list items. Now's the time for MWSD to be creative. Now is the time to do belt tightening. You see it all over the country and in our neighborhood. Many people know someone who has lost jobs due to COVID-19. If you don't, you're looking at one right now. And I'm one of many who I know in Montara under similar circumstances. If MWSD goes ahead with its plan, that good cash will be used not for essential goods, medicine, food, and rent. It will go to a non-essential water charge. And that can only be because the Montara Water and Sanitary District Board of Directors think a non-essential, non-urgent water charge is more important than people's food, medicine, rent, or other essential needs. I'll repeat that. It would mean that the directors think their non-essential special water charge is more important at this moment in history than what's been called a lifeline for many people who are newly unemployed or who can't afford basic necessities. That is simply wrong. It's not how we take care of people in our community. I'm opposed to the water service reliability charge and call on MWSD to delay its proposed implementation by 1 year. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more public comment? Okay, hearing on.
I actually have a public comment. I would like to just report a little bit on top of the manager's report that I've submitted that usually lays out a little bit what we've been doing in the past month or so. And I would like to take this opportunity and just share with the board and the public on a little bit what's happening on our end, how we're experiencing this, and you've received already some updates in the past meetings. So right now we've actually seen a loosening up in the county that started on May 1st. So construction is actually allowed again. Which means that we're also transitioning into providing non-essential services again, something like fixed unit counts or permit processes that before we wouldn't be able to do, we now can do. I want to point out that we didn't delay a single application. There was no need for it during the time that we essentially put this on hold. But what we're also now can do, and what we stopped doing, is non-essential teamwork for our staff, and that is picking up again. So we allow now just regular maintenance operation duties. We're trying to catch up on stuff that requires teams, and just want to share with you the experience that we're having, how difficult it really is to implement teamwork, adhering to social distancing. So jobs, regular jobs, whatever, maintenance, construction jobs that can be done usually, by 2 or 3 people in an hour, take now 2-3 hours. Just because we have to work around these scenarios, right? Trying to implement the social distancing requirements. Another effect, so after the first month or so of, initial hunkering down and really experiencing a little less, public traffic, et cetera, we see now that our operations team actually has to work a little extra hard. Another example that I wanted to share with the board, we have to take many water samples, some on a daily basis, others on a weekly, and we have our big quarterly sampling that involves pretty much all sources. This month, you see that there's a report that we took the water quality sampling. What it doesn't say is that we have taken the same samples so far 3 times, and we've tried to send them overnight to the lab that analyzes those 3 times, and 3 times that delivery failed within the required hold time. There's also actually temperature requirement for certain samples, and if it's if it's not in the hold time, maybe it got too hot also. So we were not able to deliver the samples to the lab. So we have to take on this work now and actually drive the samples to the lab. It's just one example of where we see actually an increase in our work.
And Clemens, where is the lab to show how much time this takes?
The lab is in Fresno. So, that's what, 2.5, I mean, without the traffic, probably 2.5-3 hour drive there and back. We have an alternative lab. We have a substitute lab that is located in Monterey. It's a little shorter distance. It's a bit risky to, we have a very established relationship with our existing lab. If we're simply switching over to a different lab, I think there are some certain risks associated with it. So we don't want to do it for this time around. We're actually driving to Fresno. We have the lab in Monterey. We also actually had in the past contact with a lab in San Francisco, much closer. At the time, they weren't accredited for all the samples that we need. So we're looking to have that discussion right now if they actually can service us fully. That would be best. Hopefully, this is just a very brief interim period where this is happening, but these types of events are actually adding to our workload right now. Then a little bit from the grant front. So one would think that there's a lot of money that's mobilized right now, and that's possibly true as well. However, you know, our best bet is, of course, to go through Cal OES or FEMA, and they're working jointly. The types of things that can be reimbursed there are disinfectants, masks, you know, all those things. Security upgrade that we had to, you know, we had to buy a new security system for like $600 or so. These things we can get reimbursed for at one point. Right now, there was a priority round. Unfortunately, that was only for agencies that had an accumulated $130,000 impact. That means small agencies were excluded from this round, quite frankly. So we have to wait and see if there is money left once it's our turn and we can actually start submitting. There is, of course, some grants for other businesses, and we're keeping our eyes open, but so far, there's nothing that really applies to us. Of course, shovel-ready projects have a good chance of getting grant money right now. I'm certain that Kishan is keeping an eye on that. There is probably some shovel-ready projects at SAM, unfortunately not at Montara Water and Sanitary District right now. So yeah, that's the public comment that I wanted to make in advance of the meeting. Thanks,
Thank
Catherine.
you. Do we have any other public comment? I see, Greg, do you have a comment? Nope. Okay, I don't see.
Actually, hello?
Hello?
Hello, yes, I'm not sure if you can hear me. This is Anne.
Oh,
and
hi,
I have
Anne.
phoned in. Hi,
How
are you?
All I could see was your phone number, and so I wasn't sure who you were. Hello.
Oh, I'm very sorry about that. I apologize.
No worries.
But yeah, I couldn't figure out how to get the video to work, so I called in instead.
That's great.
And
that's what the point is. And who, for the records?
Yes, please.
Oh, my apologies. Anne Rothman.
And is there an E on Anne, or is it A-N-N-E or A-N-N?
It's just A-N. I'm sorry, A-N-N.
Okay, thanks.
And it's R-O-T-H-M-A-N.
Okay.
And so
great.
I had a few concerns and a request of the board. I did listen to your last meeting, and I also am concerned about the report about the mega drought. And I'm particularly concerned about the Cypress Point project that seems to be going through no matter what with the county. It appears that way anyway. And I'm just concerned about the added number of people who would be using the system, the fact that we need to make improvements. And I'm also concerned that the sewer work that's already been done, particularly with the moving of the manhole that Clemens mentioned, cost $1 million, may have to be moved once again in order to make the roadway improvements that Joe Leclerc was talking about at the MCC meeting. And this is of great concern to me because we just put all that money, and I'm sure to you as well, I mean, putting that money and time and effort into improving the sewer system only to have to potentially move it again for this particular project is concerning. And also the fact that the people, the project itself, they're talking about changing an LCP so that it would be 100% affordable housing. And although you would get the hookup fee from MidPenn, you're not really getting the tax base that you would in mixed use housing. You know, should another developer come in, and there may be other considerations, and I'm just concerned about that. And finally, there seems to be a push that I noticed at the MCC, and it wasn't the MCC itself, but there was a candidate for MCC who was really pushing consolidation of the coast side into one town, which is essentially Half Moon Bay. And I've heard this at the Board of Supervisors meetings as well. this kind of push towards consolidation. And that also concerns me because I have been living on the coast 27 years in the mid-coast in Moss Beach, and we voted to purchase the water system for good reason, you know, to have autonomy and to be able to provide, as you have, fresh water for our citizens. And I'm just concerned about what's happening here with this particular project and this kind of effort in order to make that work to kind of consolidate everything. And that just concerns me, what that movement is all about. And I was just hoping that, you know, the board would consider either drafting a letter to the Planning Commission, you know, not approving the LCP change. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And the mega drought that you're talking about, you can see the graphics for it, I believe. It was in an SF Gate article on April 16th, 2020, this year. And the graphics are pretty shocking as to what we will be looking at to maintain a good flow of water supply. And it's been part of this district's concern for a whole long time. But I would highly recommend to everyone to look at the April 16, 2020 article. And I have a graph that I will send to Clemens, and maybe he can put it on the website and link the article to it, because it is pretty important for us to know that the weather patterns are changing. We're looking at more storms of fewer storms, but with higher intensity rainfall. So we need to be looking at our water supply and at our sewer maintenance program with all of that in mind, with these changing circumstances. And thank you. We will look into that, and I'll stay in touch with Clemens on what you've said. And I don't hang up. I will write your phone number down so I can stay in touch with you.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
Let me see. Got your number. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving right along then to consent agenda. I see no more public comment. Rick Lohman, okay.
I just want to make a couple of quick comments, especially to Ann. As far as I know, the Montara board is 100% constantly against any form of consolidation. We have campaigned on that. That is our issue. There is a process for consolidation that the consolidators don't want to use because they know it'll fail. So the people who are trying to wipe us off the map are literally looking to the county or the state to try to mandate something, because they know we're against it. We know the people are against it in Montara, Moss Beach. And we are fighting this with all we can because we know what a disaster it would be. And then a quick comment on costs and delaying things. Catherine started off the meeting by saying we will look at delaying things as long as we possibly can, but the district has to stay solvent. We have been tasked with the legal suit from Half Moon Bay. We will try to delay things as long as possible to help everybody out, but the district can't go broke. The district has to stay alive, or things like Ann feared, the consolidation threat is always there. Oh, Montara is not doing well. Let's just merge them into Half Moon Bay. So we are working that knife edge every day here to keep the district open. I think that Montara is the closest to its citizens of any district on the coast. We are all local folks here who want to do the best for everybody here. And back to buying out the district and the millions of dollars we spent, that is our dedication. So we are working constantly to help everybody out, but also keep the district alive so we're not consolidated. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more comment? Moving right along then to consent agenda. We have, let me read these. We have approved the minutes for regularly scheduled board meetings, April 2nd and April 16th, 2020. Approved financial statements for March 2020. Approved warrants for May 1st, 2020. SAM flow report for March 2020. Review of current investment portfolio. Connection permit applications received. Monthly water production report, rain report, solar energy report, and monthly agency retirement service report for February 2020. I will also comment, if anybody looks at the monthly water production report, what it shows is the demand. We only produce and draw water when it is on demand. So it is not a graphic of what our ability is. It is a graphic of how much water people are demanding. And I'd like to have that pulled, if you would be so kind. Do I have a motion to approve items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 9?
So move.
Second.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Jim, for the second. All those in discussion? All those in favor,
Aye.
say
Aye.
aye.
Catherine,
Aye.
point of order.
President,
Roll call vote, please.
thank you.
Yes.
Roll call only.
Oh, thank you very much. I forgot that again. Christine, bless you.
That was Scott.
Scott, bless him. Bless everybody.
Roll call.
I didn't even
Roll call vote.
Bless you one and all.
Roll call vote.
Director Boyd,
Aye.
Director Decker,
Aye.
Director Harvey,
Aye.
Director Lohman,
Yes.
Director Slater Carter.
Aye. And on item 7, I have a question for Clements. What has this shelter in place in our community done to our water demand?
So would you like me to share? I don't think it's worth sharing the screen here right now.
No.
That's an interesting question, because with this shelter in place, we of course expect some change in the use. I want to just explain that we see quite a bit of change in uses throughout the year, just between day and night, for example, between the week and a weekday, we see changes in usage patterns. If school's out, it's definitely looking very different than when everybody's in town. So we are very much used to seeing changing use patterns, and what the result of the shelter in place is that all of this change in use has gone away. So we don't necessarily see an increase in water. We don't see a decrease in water. We're pretty much right on target. We are around the 220,000 gallons a day of usage that we probably average throughout a year, and it is just so much more consistent. So that's really what we're seeing. It's not really high up, high down.
That's interesting. Yeah.
It's more constant and a very consistent usage.
Oh, I would have guessed it had gone up. I would have guessed.
I've been waiting for
watching.
that also,
Yeah.
but that doesn't seem to be the case right now. Of course, we see now some nice weather, so I'm thinking about April data. Let's see how the May data looks like. So we'll find out.
Sounds good. Okay,
Catherine, I have one very brief comment.
please.
It's 8 o'clock and Montara is howling, and I would ordinarily be out there making some noise, but not tonight.
Okay.
But I'm grateful to our neighbors who make themselves known every night. It's great.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, so do I have a motion to approve item number 7 with a
So
roll
moved.
call vote? Thank you, Rick. Second?
I second.
Thank you. All those in favor in a
No,
roll
roll
call
call.
vote, say aye.
No, roll call vote. Okay.
Okay, so let's do a roll call vote.
Okay. Director Boyd,
Aye.
Director Decker,
Aye.
Director Harvey,
Aye.
Director Loman,
Yes.
Director Slater Carter.
Can we howl in acceptance? Oh, yes. Moving on, we have no old business. New business, item 1, review and possible action concerning the draft MWSD budget.
Thank you, Catherine. So we're one of the rare agencies that actually puts a very preliminary draft up, even to the board, even before we have the finance committee take a real look at this, a close look at this, and that is really the stage where we're in. So the document that you have in front of you in this packet has draft all over. So I want to caution everybody that this is a draft and that numbers are going to change. We are at this point, really staff has put something together, and we are asking the board to refer this draft to the finance committee. And with that, we have actually Peter Medina here. And I know Peter would like to share, I think, the key drivers that we are probably going to look at in the finance committee meeting. And with that, Peter, would you like me to share the screen? Do you want to share the screen?
I would like you to share the screen.
Okay. Okay. All right. Let me see if I can find that right. I think this is the correct one. And we'll find out. Yes, it is. You guys, hold on, I lost the meeting. Can you guys see my screen now?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So with that, Peter, I'm gonna hand the word over to you. You tell me where to go and scroll.
Okay, Clemens, you can stay put. I would like to really focus on the first 2 pages of there. You guys should be relatively comfortable with the document that you're looking at, being the MWSD budget for fiscal year 2021. Sewer and the cash flow format. We show this. It's mainly what you would see as a P&L. The only thing that it brings into it are balance sheet transaction, being debt principal payments as well as capital improvements. In terms of what Clemens was referring to, the major drivers of the budget, we have data through March. So in terms of the operations, we have a pretty good idea of what we are expecting 9 months of the year. We should get April data in the coming day, hopefully no more than a week, to drop April data in to see how we're tracking with various monthly expenses. For the sewer fund, the major push here, or a major piece here, is the capital improvement program. We're still working with our engineer to get solid numbers in the format that we display on a yearly basis, being the 5-year plan. We have an idea of what the expectations are for 2021. The budget for 1920 in terms of capital project has not quite come off. We have a capital budget of $1.4 million, and we've spent about $200,000. So, we go into the budget season with these ideas of how we are going to operate, and then so the big pieces are the capital improvement program year after year, and so it requires a lot of work with our engineers. So for both sewer and water, it's the capital improvement program. In addition, operational wise, personnel costs, for sewer and as well as water, mainly water. They have more FTEs than does sewer. For the sewer side, the largest expense is SAM assessments. And so we've been working with SAM staff and getting the various components of the budget in place. There are also additional pieces that we have to that aren't assessments of all member agencies, but assessment of Montara directly. And so we usually set up a budget of about $120,000 for pump station repairs that we are responsible for. Those are the major pieces for sewer in terms of the expense side. For the revenue side, it's sewer service charges, and we are still working to get to solidify that number. It requires some time to gather the data during the wet weather months. So staff are working on that. So we're still looking to solidify that figure there. And then Clemens, if you would please move on to the water side. For water, water sales are the piece that we will go back and forth on the most. A lot of it is a good deal of guesswork. We do not necessarily have a fixed fee component of the rate. So a lot of it is based on usage, and as one of the district ratepayers saying, so we're going into a drought period, and we're not quite sure what that's going to do. We've discussed it between Clemens and I and the finance committee, but we're not quite sure what that's going to do to the rate in the period of 2021. So we deal with that as well as not having a rate increase. What is that going to do to revenue being brought in during this 12-month period? So water rates as well as property tax. I didn't bring it up on the sewer side, but we split we split property tax 50-50 between water and sewer. We have a good idea as far as what our base rate is going to be. The part that we don't know is ERAF. We've seen some good money come in from ERAF over a 5 to 6 year time period. We're always kind of hesitant to plan for it because we don't know what it's going to be. So once again, we'll be going through that discussion with the finance committee. On the expense side, as I talked about, personnel costs, and then other various operating pieces. You guys can all see, you guys have access to the document. That the document also, as you move further along, contains all of our GL revenue and expense codes. There's also a discussion toward the end on the debt service for the year. Water and sewer both carry debt. So the current year principal payments are also captured on the summary pages. One piece also, connection fees. Another piece that will be discussed in more detail, what expectations are. We were woefully under budget this month, and then somehow, or not somehow, in March and April, so I'll tell you, 3 or 4 full connections were brought on. Yes. Oh, I thought I heard my name. Okay, so I'll try to wrap it up quickly. These are the major drivers. We have time set out in the next coming weeks to sit down, Clemens and I and the finance committee, to try to hone in the budget as much as we can with the data that we have, as well as discuss other impending issues that we would like to set aside money for in the budget. So that's it, Clemens.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have questions or comments from the public first? I see our screen. Let me see what I can find.
You have a chat from me, and I tried pushing the raise my hand button.
Okay. Now I see you, now that you're commenting.
Okay, so I apparently somehow missed a couple of finance committee meetings, so I'm flying in the dark here. And I note at the bottom of the two colored pages on water and sewer, it refers to pages 22 and 23 for explanation of some of the reserve handling. But in my copy of this agenda, it doesn't have anything like that on pages 22 and 23.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, Greg.
These questions because I don't know if that's where it should be.
No, those are holdover from my pro forma from the 1920. I haven't highlighted for my eyes to see. I know that I will have to refer the discussion back to the exact pages. Those pages haven't been updated in this copy. Clemens, if you can go up a little bit, I believe they are on page 18, 19, and 20. I believe. I could be wrong.
But my question, Peter, isn't really for you. It's for the Finance Committee. It looks to me, just a rough glance here, like we're budgeting losing over $1 million on sewer next year, and we're budgeting losing over $1 million on water. Am I reading that right? Yes, that's the net cash flow provided. No, maybe I'm not reading that right. But my question is, does this include the rate increases? We're already going to lose money?
Well, Greg, well, yes, it includes the rate increases. You see, so first of all, Peter pointed out the CIP isn't final. These are preliminary numbers, and we have to hone them in. But what you see reflected here is that the phase B of the Cabrillo Highway Improvement Project is included here. So the sewer fund has reserves that were built up that are particularly for this project. So we are planning to transfer ultimately around $1.1 million if we can get this project permitted next year to complete the highway crossing. I mean, the real reason why we did the highway crossing, or the only reason why we did the highway crossing, is really the section that is going north to Montara along the highway. That's a problematic section. It has a sag in it. We've seen sewer spills due to it. If it plugs up, it's the entire flow from Montara that's being stopped. So it's a very critical main artery. And so that's the money for that project that you see in there.
I'm not questioning the need. I'm only questioning the thinking behind a projection for a deficit on both franchises with the rate increase already included. If I read this right, after you pay off some bond debt in the water side and so forth, you're losing $1.3 million in cash flow. And in the sewer, you're losing $1.1 million, if I'm reading that right. Is that right?
So well, first, on the water side, you see actually here on the cash flow that the water system reliability charge of $1 million is plugged in.
Yeah, but go down further. Net cash flow provided by financing activities, canceling out. So what's the bottom line number? Is it the 48,000?
Overall, it's $48,000.
Okay. And Greg, you've been following the district business all along. You know that the cash need on the water side was $2 million for the water system reliability charge.
And you only put $1 million in here.
And the board authorized the charge only up to $1 million.
Right.
So we've asked for 100% more, and the board cut it down by 50% and essentially said, we give you this, and we have to reassess. We have to reassess in the coming years.
Okay, and now something I've brought up on lots of prior meetings is these statements don't show the reserve status going forward.
It's on page 13.
Thank you.
Sorry, 14th.
Okay, there we are.
Yeah, we go into the operating reserves for both. So we have three types of reserve. We have operating reserves, connection fee reserves, as well as the capital improvement program reserves for both sewer and water. And the discussion happens on the next 3 pages. So
Yeah, I see it.
those. So you'll see our figures up through March 31st, 2020, as well as the discussion of what the targets are.
Okay, so for water, we're okay. In sewer, you have insufficient dedicated operating sewer reserves for this year. And you're implying you will have enough for the minimum next year with the rate increase to adhere to policy.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I'm done.
Thanks, Greg.
Do we have any more questions from the public? Okay, let's close this for the public then and bring it back to the board. And again, Clement, you're gonna have to keep an eye because all I can see is the screen now and I can't see who's asking. I do have the participants if you want to put your hand up for whatever it works on this. I don't see.
Yeah, Greg, where did you find the hand raise function?
It's in the reactions icon
Yeah.
at the bottom of the screen.
It is not for me. I've been looking for it.
Well,
You just wave
the
your
host.
hands.
Okay,
The
Rick,
host doesn't have to raise their hand.
We'll just go around the board.
explains
Let's
it.
start with Peter. Peter, what
Do we
comments
still
do you
have Clement's screen being displayed here?
Yes, we do. Peter, why don't we start with your questions and comments?
We have looked at this budget in great detail twice in the finance committee meeting, and the big open question was always what's happening on the SAM side, and that has not been brought to an end yet. And we would really like to know what the final proposal is from SAM and how that reflects in the monthly payments we're making to SAM and the year payment. Other than that, I must say that Peter Medina has done a beautiful job in laying out exactly where all the numbers come from. He has put it in a format that is easy to understand, and I compliment him on that work. I only wish that work could have been done in the same way for SAM so that it becomes easier for us to read both. At this moment, the SAM budget is very difficult to read for me, simply because I've gotten used to the format brought by Peter Medina.
Okay, Jim.
Yeah, the finance committee met twice, and we went through this in detail, and Peter and Clemens did a great job, and we do have the SAM budget unknowns at this point. I agree with Peter. That's it.
Okay, Rick.
Yeah, I just want quick comments on, this is one of the hardest balancing acts I've ever seen on any board around here. With the coronavirus economic crash, Half Moon Bay lawsuits, delayed maintenance that we haven't been able to do in the past, trying to move forward with everything all at once, protect the people, protect our district. These are tough times, and this is a tough balancing act. And I think all the folks who are contributing are doing a great job just trying to keep everything going, because this is tough times. Thanks.
Scott.
So we've been through something a little bit similar to this before, starting in 2008. And we had to work really hard to figure out how we're going to keep things going without being unduly burdensome on our ratepayers, many of whom were going through a terrible situation financially. A lot of people wound up with upside down mortgages and all sorts of crazy financial strains. I think what we're seeing right now is bigger than that. I certainly am, well, I like Joel, I'm well aware of what's happening across the board to people in our economy. And right now, the people who still have jobs are in a very different world than the people who no longer have jobs, or who have jobs but only 20-30% of the work that they had before. We didn't face this in 2008, 9, and 10, but we did get some practice on how to behave. And I think it's time for us to go back to some of the lessons that we learned and make some hard decisions about what's essential to get us through the year. Try to make our best estimate of what's going to happen on the financial front for folks, and then figure out what degrees of freedom that we have on dealing with the differences between people who are employed and people who are not. So I really appreciate, Catherine, your comment earlier. I encourage the Finance Committee to take all the hard work that you've done so far and do a little bit more. And this time it's, I see Peter shaking his head or nodding, and there's work to be done. And right now is when this is not going to be easy. I know that everybody involved, Peter, Clemens, our committee, others as well, have worked very hard to get us to this point, but our job's not done. Things are upon us that we did not anticipate, and which have impressed themselves upon us in a way that probably unique in our lifetime. So someone raised this issue on Nextdoor recently, and I was reminded of some of the really innovative things that Clemens brought some really great ideas forward that allowed us to defer a lot of spending. I do want to mention everything that we defer becomes deferred maintenance. And in the decade since the economy started recovering, we've been, as a board, as an agency, riding the brake because we were not interested in doing anything to incur any kind of rate shock on the community. And we've spent the past couple of years talking about, okay, the piper's got to be paid, and the infrastructure is a decade older now, and we started deferring a whole lot of this maintenance. I think we're just going to have to figure out, okay, what must get fixed and what can we defer. And I think we need to put some present and future valuation numbers on some of the deferrals might mean. It's going to cost us something to defer some of this maintenance. Mm-hmm. Just for the public, what we as a team have learned is every time we put off any project that involves construction, contractors, purchasing materials like pipe and pumps and any kind of equipment, every year we put it off, always costs us more. However, here we are in a crisis, and there are going to be people who are in the business of providing these services and the kind of equipment that we need. And what we learned last time also was that sometimes there's a win-win to be had by paying less for something that someone is really desperate to sell just so they can keep their people employed. And it's good for them, and it's good for our ratepayers as well. So I think we've got the biggest challenge we've ever faced. And we thought the past couple of years dealing with the lawsuit and spills and fines from the regulators were enough to work with, but now we get a little bit more. But I think this team's up for it. I look very, very much forward to what the committee can do. I do have a question for staff, and that is on the upcoming meeting. for June 4th. How much latitude do we have as a board to consider modifications to what is being heard? For example, concrete example, Joel proposed putting off the rate increase for a year. Does the board on the June 4th meeting have the latitude to consider modifications about when these things will go into effect? I see Christine, I see you thinking really hard. Good. And I ask because I think we're going to want to sharpen the pencil and think about a few things. And I kind of want to figure out, as we consider this budget, it obviously is going to be very driven by what happens on June 4th. And if we can keep the meeting, knowing that we have some adjustments we might be able to make, that would be good. Not having a Prop 218 meeting is hard, and I'd rather not reschedule it. But Christine, do you have any?
Sure, Scott. The board is not required under Prop 218 to approve a rate increase at the public hearing, even if it receives less than a majority protest. So yes, the board can consider public testimony, all its protests, and make a different decision other than approving the rate increases.
Would that allow a modified decision that had a lesser financial impact? Like if we just dialed it back and said, hey, we're going to postpone it 6 months or 12 months, could we make that kind of modification at that meeting?
That's an interesting question. So are you saying that you're saying that you would consider approving that rate increase, but postponing it for
right?
Well, that's my question. That's my question. Is that an option? Because I mean, I've always looked at 218 notices as a couple of things. One, it's an up or down decision. Often it's about setting a new upper limit, but doesn't commit us to an implementation schedule. And we've often, over the years, explained to our ratepayers that while it allows us to go to a certain percentage, our plans were to increase it at a slower rate and not go all the way to the maximum immediately. I'm just looking over our materials, and I don't find that kind of language here about anything. What it says is our intention is to increase every year for 3 years. If that wording allows us to set an implementation schedule that takes into account things like Joel is raising, I'd like to know that we have that option so that we don't have to delay and reissue the 218 notice and whatnot.
Right. I'd like to maybe look into that before I give you a definite answer.
Okay.
Could you give us that answer at our next meeting?
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
So
good point, Scott. Thanks.
And Scott, thank you very much for bringing this up. And I think we all acknowledge the severity of the situation, and that what we planned before this catastrophe hit us was definitely different than what we encounter right now. And it's difficult to have a crystal ball. But we just looked at the water cash flow, and I just want to caution the board. The net cash flow that's provided through the rates is currently $320,000, and that is not enough to cover us even alone from regulatory requirements that may come down, like we've seen in the past with, for example, we were required to add a treatment plant. And that treatment plant alone would cost more than the $320,000.
Yeah, on something like that, I think you are going to find 5 board members who are willing to drive to Sacramento and talk to regulators about their inappropriate timing if that kind of thing comes down. I mean,
that is correct.
We're in a different world, and I hear you. I'm not disagreeing with you.
I'm just saying, we understand and know that the number that should sit here should be $2 million. We're trying to get it up to $1 million right now. So I just caution the board. I'm not saying don't do it, but you have to understand that any decision not implementing the charge right now could put the district into risk of getting out of compliance.
Yeah. No, I take your point, and I'm not disagreeing even a little bit.
And I also want to maybe just also get into something that I've heard from Joel in his introductory comments about not doing non-essential projects. And I think, Joel, if you're going to look through our budget, and I'm certain you will, you may find some non-essential things in the budget. Let's say, for example, conferences. Do we really have to go to conferences at this time right now? Is there even a chance to go there? But
I didn't get that. Could you try?
Whoops.
But you'll see that Siri thought I was talking to. But those numbers, of course, are really peanuts in the budget. So what I'm trying to get to is that the project that we planned are all essential, and if we continue to defer, we're going to be very quickly running a risk of having a water system that is in disrepair, like we had when we took it over in 2003. So it's a very slippery slope. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, no, I'd like to elaborate, and I'll in the memory of Paul Perkovic, I'll bring a little show and tell object here. I'm glad Keishan's here, because Keishan has been dealing with issues of what happens when we defer maintenance for too long. And Keishan is now doing the very heroic task of trying to drag Sam out of a terrible spot. And I'm grateful that you're doing that. What happens when we cut too far is life gets painful, and there's nothing like fingernail clippers to drive that point home. It's great to have fingernails that are trimmed appropriately, but if you trim them too closely, your life is all about the pain in that, even the smallest finger. And that's all you think about for a long time. And what we saw when we had on the intertie pipeline system, where we didn't do the maintenance that led to the leak, that led to the fines, that led to the projects that now we have to do because regulators have insisted that we go spend big money. They're not wrong that the system needed the help, but it forced our hand in a way and exposed, wastewater to the environment and put health and safety at risk and required all sorts of emergency spending and just chaos. So I think we're all pretty clear. Finance committee and staff is going to go back and I don't think there's any choice but to go look and take a good hard look and just cut or delay anything that we can, and then be sure that anything that's left, that we really understand the basis for why it must be as soon as we have it scheduled. It's going to be a tough job, and I think everybody's going to be disappointed. This is one of those. I don't believe in compromise at meeting in the middle. As my rule on how we should govern is look for the win-win every chance we can. I'm not one of those everybody has to be dissatisfied things, but I think this is one of those situations where nobody's going to be happy with the outcome. And Clemens, the regulators, staff, the board, our constituents, I think there's going to be pain on multiple fronts. And the finance committee, I wish you the best. because you're going to be dancing on the edge of a knife here, and hopefully we can come up with something where we can pare things down just right. But that's my piece. Thank you.
Okay, I will comment one to Peter's question. The SAM Finance Committee this week approved the budget to send it on to each of the districts. And Keishan is here with Peter to bring that to us in our next agenda item.
Actually,
Greg, thank you for your comments on reserves earlier. That's been a long discussion. And we finally decided we needed to start building reserves, but it does cost money. And the discussions to the public who is saying just reduce it, this board already took the engineering and economic recommendations and asked to have those cut in half. Everyone is, I believe, aware of this is our district. And for everyone on the board, we make this decision based on the welfare of the district and the population of Montara and Moss Beach. So if we put this district in financial risk, it affects every single person who lives here. Because the other things that are used is not only the water that you turn on the tap, but the fire protection water, even for people who are in town and on wells. And we've reduced a lot of costs over the years, including insurance costs, by upgrading our system. But it's hard to recall that when you've still got the bills and you haven't looked at it. One thing I would like to perhaps we could look at is loans are at an all-time low interest rate right now. Maybe it's possible that we could find a prepayable loan that could meet our finance needs for the short term and be able to do the improvements that we need to do, with the public aware that we are going to need to repay those loans. But I believe we can get them at between 1% and 2%, which is pretty much free money. And I'm very concerned about the inflation. There's many people here who don't remember it. I remember all too clearly the inflation in the late 70s. When we were up 18, 19, 26% for money. And costs were going up incredibly. So we've got to be able to protect this district for the long term and for what I'm afraid is the oncoming inflation. But if we can get a loan at a low rate right now, maybe that's a way of working on this too. So I would make that request. Do we have any follow-up questions from the board? Okay, Clemens, it says review and possible action. So the action is we're going to send this to the Finance Committee and to Christine to explore those requests from the board members.
And Catherine, we have a tentative time and date for the Finance Committee next Wednesday at 2 p.m. We're gonna find if anyone wants to attend this who's currently present, of course, besides directors, because only the Finance Committee can participate in that.
So can Director Christine, can a director, if it's done on Zoom, tune in and just leave it on mute and listen?
That would be the same as attending the committee meeting and
having to be quiet.
Right.
It's really hard.
Right. I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
I said it can be really hard for some of us, but with it on mute, we can chat all we want and not have to be heard.
Can we lock it? Lock mute?
There you go.
Lock mute.
Well, I mean, you would also have to turn your screen off. I believe. I suggest Christina's going to look into this. I don't think that directors can participate in this committee meeting.
In any event,
I'd like to suggest something, Catherine.
I agree with that.
Sure.
Can't participate.
That because we're doing this by remote and Zoom has that capability, we can mute both video and audio from any director. The host of the meeting has that power. And it's then no different than listening on radio. So maybe that's okay. I'd suggest that, Christine, that you consider that.
That would be terrific. Thank you.
So basically, the director would not have the ability to participate
or be seen
orally.
No, well, that's the thing, Catherine, that being seen is considered participation.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So it would be, as you said, Scott, well, the way to do it would be just to dial in on the phone and put it on mute.
Yeah, but what I'm suggesting is that the host of the meeting can enforce that.
Right.
And should.
Right. Okay, well, that sounds good. And Anne and Greg and Joel, I hope you have time in your afternoon to be able to do that. We'll move on to new business. Then item 2, review and possible action concerning Sewer Authority Mid-Coast side fiscal year 17-18 audited financial statements.
Thanks, Catherine. So we received that request at the last meeting, at the April 16 meeting, to bring the SAM audit to this board for discussion. I think there's good reason to take a look at that audit. This is now actually, we've already received some pretty interesting audit results in the prior fiscal year from SAM. And I think the first curiosity here is that SAM just actually received their 17-18 audit. That should have happened, of course, within the calendar year 18 or beginning of 19 and not in 20. So there's reasons for this delay. The opinion was disclaimed due to 2 material weaknesses, and so there's quite a bit of stuff going on in the SAM audit. We have actually the SAM general manager. We also have the George. What's your title? Chief Financial Officer of SAM. Something along those lines. And also Peter Medina, our accountant, who can help us a little bit understand what this is, and he's actually been working with SAM on this as well, so he understands this. So we have enough experts to help us understand what this audit means. Before I hand this over to Kishan, who actually asked to put on a slideshow, and I agreed to that. I want to point out that none of the people that are presenting here tonight from SAM actually were involved in the time in positions that of authority in regards to the finances at SAM at the time.
Right.
So they're just the bearer of bad news. So with that, I would like to hand this over to Kishan for a presentation. And Kishan, I'm assuming you're going to share the screen.
Yes. And before Kishan gets involved, before Kishan starts talking, I would like to say that many of the reasons that I see for the problems with the audits that SAM is undergoing right now came from the fact that the majority of the SAM board could not approve spending the money on a good financial system at that time, and it led to some serious deficiencies. for staff and in the accounting and in the systems and so on. And so this is another example of, had we not tried to clip those nails quite so close to the flesh, we would have, it actually would have cost us less in the long run compared to what we're going through with the audits. Thank you. Keisha, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction, Clemens. And before I jump on to the audit, I would like to inform the board as well as the public that our general budget and collections budget, as Director Slater-Carter mentioned, has been approved by the Finance Committee, and we are taking it to the SAM board on May 11th, that is this Monday. And subsequent to that, we will be glad to present it to the Montara board at the earliest opportunity available.
Thank you.
Okay. Having said that, I would like to introduce my colleague, George Evans, who's the finance officer for SAM, who has tremendous experience and is a wonderful asset to SAM. He has, although he's held this position of finance officer for the past 1 month, but in his earlier position at SAM, he has been involved with the various accounts of SAM and has very good experience. Now, as Director Slater-Carter and Clemens rightly pointed out, none of us, neither me nor George, were involved during the finance part of it of year 17-18 of the audit which is being presented. We've had a couple of staff turnover at SAM for the past couple of years, including the general manager who had a very strong finance background, and also turnover of finance staff who were involved during the audit and during the year 17-18 and post 17-18. So we've been going through that, and those are the reasons why the audit has taken such a long time. And just to give you an idea, we understand that the 17-18 has taken a lot of time, but we've already started working on the 18-19 along with Peter from Maze, and we expect that to be completed very quickly, maybe June, July, or a little late, July, August, or a little later. But we intend catching up and becoming current by the end of this year, so that we would be able to finish the 19-20 also. That is our intent, and Peter and his team, along with our team, is working towards that. Now, if I may be permitted to share the screen, Clemens. Have I already got? Yep, good.
You have permission, I think.
Yes, I have. Let me go to that. Is everybody able to see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I understand that the complete audit, the report is in your packets, but what I am going to present to you is a brief preview about the significant deficiencies and material weaknesses which have been pointed out by the audit or by the auditor. But keep in mind that these are all which have occurred between 17 and 18. But our response, I've indicated as the present scenario, how we have taken that shortcomings and what we have done to overcome that. And as we move along, Peter and his team are giving us enough support and guidance to make sure that these do not recur again, and we would not have these comments come up again. So a couple of issues would be, the first one is the administrative issues where the auditor indicated issues with accounting personnel and journal entries. Their criteria was that the check signing, recording, general entity, and reconciliation should be performed by separate employees. And that was the comment made during 17-18. And therefore, what SAM has done in the present situation, which has been implemented a couple of months back, is that now we have new qualified internal staff who have been hired. We have completed significant training on the software Tyler in code. Just to give you a heads up, during 17-18, we had we had a software which was basically QuickBooks, and then we transitioned from QuickBooks to Tyler Encode software. And at that point of time, we actually did not carry over the same thing into Tyler. We just stopped it at a point and switched over to Tyler. And that's why it was difficult for us to go back and forth, and people were getting used to the new software, and people who were trained staff left, and the new staff was catching up with it. But right now we have completed significant training on Tyler Encode. And we have engaged Maze consultants, Peter and his team, to provide additional functionality to the team. And therefore, the improved system right now includes establishment of all internal controls with respect to authorization, recording, reconciliation process that is reviewed by multiple staff members, by the general manager, by the finance officer, and by the consultants. We've also developed journal entry cover sheets with signature sign-offs, and we've improved production of timely and accurate finance information to the board. If you see our board packets in the second meeting of every month, we present the budget. We present the profit and loss statements and give a detail about what expenses and have occurred and how we are up to each stage in the budget. The second comment made by the auditor was on the computer systems, which I've already talked about, where he said that software should be able to produce timely, accurate reports and staff should be trained. And I believe that was a comment based on the QuickBooks software that we had. So in the present situation, we've received sufficient training. We have completed training on different modules like accounts receivables, accounts payables, payroll and purchase orders. The next criteria was on the restricted net position, unrestricted net position, where the criteria was that you should have unrestricted reserves to meet cash flows to meet short-term cash flows for several months. And the present situation at SAM is SAM does have sufficient funds to meet short-term cash flows for several months. The operation budget is approved by the member agencies and fully funded for the year. I don't want to boast SAM team, but I would like to say that we're almost at the end of the year and we have not gone for a mid-year budget adjustment. We have been able to control our budget very well, and it's still within the adopted budget of 1920. And at no time there has been critical cash flow positions. And coming to the next one, which is about long-term emergency reserves, where the auditor has mentioned that 1.25 million should be held in reserve to fund repair or replacement of capital assets. This is mentioned in the SAM policy, which was adopted by the SAM board way back, I think it was in 2003, and it has not been changed since then. So the present situation is SAM does have two types of reserves in its reserve policy. One is an emergency repair reserve of 1.25 million. This is what is required by the reserve policy. And the other reserve which is required to be maintained is operating reserve, which is at least 2 months of budgeted operating expense. Approximately, it's about $800,000. So SAM has 3 accounts, which has the local agency investment fund, which is the LAIF. Then you have the money market and checking. And it's only a question of money management. And we are working with Maze to see how best we can do our money management and put together all these 3 accounts. We do have sufficient funds to maintain both the emergency repair as well as the repair reserve as well as the operating reserve. So once again, driving home the point that SAM does have adequate funding for reserves. And then the other one is on the post-employment benefits, which is also called as OPEB. Now, the obligation on OPEB based on the actuarial data is, as the auditors have reported, is an approximately 406, and therefore monthly payments have been accounted for, set aside in the budget, and there has been no problem on the OPEB. Now, should there be a change in scenario, if the board decides, then Sam is willing to adopt that. So I have the forum open for questions. I'm available, George is available, and to support us, we have Peter from Mays Associates. Questions, please.
Let's start with questions from the public. I can only
raise my hand.
Thank you, Greg. You're first.
So Kishan, first, thanks very much. I have some glimmer of how difficult this has been for you. I had talked to Beverly Marshall and part of my research project going back 2 years. And I was very concerned about Sam. So the easy question is, great, this is 2018. When do we get 2019 financial statements?
2019 audited financial statements. That are you talking of 18-19 or are you talking of 19-20?
18-19.
18-19, we expect to be done by September, October. That's our plan. Correct me if I'm wrong, Peter. Is that our goal? Peter?
I hear you. Overall goal, and we've talked about this extensively with Sam's staff, is by the end of calendar 2020, we will be fully caught up with both 18-19 as well as 19-20 and get on a normal audit track going forward.
Wow. Okay, that's great.
Yes.
And this question could be for Kishan or any member of the Finance Committee. I recall about 2 years ago, I think, Kishan, you came and presented a 20-year capital expenditure plan for the SAM situation. It was like $50 million, present value to $40 million over 20 years. So my question is, does Montara have a copy of what the capital expense allocation going forward for that time period is going to be, an updated copy?
Yes, Greg, you are absolutely right. The 20-year capital improvement budget was presented to Montara by me. And subsequent to that, last year we decided to go for a 5-year capital budget, which was worked out by one of our consultants. We took basically the excerpts from the 20-year, developed a 5-year, and further on actually zeroed down to a 2020-21 budget. So that has been adopted by the board as of now, 2021. And we have a consultant right now who's working on a 5-year CIP. And we decided to separate out the 2021 from the 5-year because we wanted to move forward in the budget. So the adopted 2021 is already available, but the modified 5-year capital improvement project is still in progress, and we intend bringing it to the SAM board in a couple of months, and then we will share it with Montara.
But the years 6 through 15 or 6 through 20, those assets are still aging, and something's got to be reserved for those assets. Or when we get there, we're going to be like falling off a cliff because we're going to have a huge need. So my question is somebody keeping track of that 20-year timeline, which you put so much work into, so we can see what's left of the 20 years as we go forward year by year? Is there an update that shows, all right, we've taken these first 5-6 years out, we've still got these 14 years left?
We haven't done an update so far on the 20-year CIP, but we did take excerpts from 20-year CIP and developed a 5-year and a 1-year CIP.
All right.
And that.
And my last question is something that maybe nobody here can answer, and maybe it's confidential because of the lawsuits, but I noticed in the flow report that previously, I think we'd seen Half Moon Bay was up to 55% usage. Now they're up to 58% usage. So the question is, at some point, are we going to be able to pay less because Half Moon Bay is using much more of the plant? Well, 8% more of the plant. I don't know who to ask that of.
Good question related to the lawsuit that I don't know if we can address quite yet.
Okay, so just for Joel and other members of the public to see this is happening, besides the lawsuit costs, Half Moon Bay is spilling crumbs into the bed again by overusing their allocation. All right, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're all on
Joel?
your side, Greg.
Joel, do you have a question? I saw your hand. You're on mute right now. I see it
Catherine,
now.
I'm back in case you haven't noticed. The internet came back up. I don't know what's happening.
Oh.
I know you missed me.
I just thought you were abnormally quiet. Anne, do you have a question?
That's abnormal.
Hearing no question from Anne, let's start with Peter.
I have many questions still, but I'd like to keep those for the Finance Committee meeting because they go in so much detail that that I think it will take way too long to do
Okay.
Peter, you have, of course, now access to the SAM staff. In the Finance Committee, Peter Medina will will participate. He has quite a bit of experience with the SAM audit, but today you have access to George and Keishan.
Yes, I understand.
Okay.
Okay. Jim, do you have questions?
No, I will be on. I'm on the Finance Committee, so I'll wait for that moment also. But thank you, Keishan, for doing all the work you did. I know it's a challenge in keeping up with this, and you've done a great job. Thank you.
And I will add that Peter and Jim and Rick and Scott already know this. If you do have specific questions for Keishan or George, you can arrange to talk to them, and they'll be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you.
Rick?
Anything I say will delay the meeting hours, so I'll just pass for a while.
Okay, Scott?
Keishan, I really appreciate the detailed list of mitigation steps that you've taken and the accomplishments that you have with staff. The training, I very much appreciate, along with the other steps, but the training is still on my mind about the transition that we made to the new system was not how I would have done it. And I appreciate that you're taking care of getting staff prepared to deal with the system properly. That's so important. It seems like such a small thing, but in looking through the audit and the comments from the auditor, I'm looking forward to good audits going forward, just because we've got a handle on tracking the details. So it's a small thing. I think it often goes underappreciated, so I really wanted to call it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. And my comments are that sometimes there is a penny wise and pound foolish sort of aspect to things. And unfortunately, I remember many of those discussions at the time on when we were transitioning accounting systems. And this is the logical consequence and the natural consequence as well. So I echo Scott's words to Peter and George and Keishan and actually all the other staff that has been involved in this. So thank you very much. But I do have a little request from Sam. And that is, if you were to go through the last couple of audits and just make a list of the requirement or the recommendations from the auditors, I think it would be very useful to have that sent to each of the general managers and each of the board members. Because as I recall, one of the recommendations has been to have the board more involved with the finances of SAM. And I see your hand, Peter. And so I'd like to just have people made sharply aware of that. So if you would be so kind, if it wouldn't take too much trouble, I would appreciate that.
No problem. We'll do that, and we'll send it out to all the general managers.
Thank you very much. Okay, do we have any more questions or comments? Thank you very much for your time, Keishan and George and Peter. And we will move on to the next item, which is about the location for the June 4th meeting.
Thank you, Catherine. So this has really a lot to do with the public hearing, the Prop 218 hearing that's scheduled for June 4. As everybody knows, we prepared and sent out the notice, of course, before the shelter in place started. So now the governor actually asked to hold meetings online. However, there is also a physical location noticed, of course, at on our public notice. So what we really like to do is we recommend really that the remote access to the hearing be also permitted. So we essentially that we have both. We have remote access as well as a location, which is of course the district office, to attend in person, and that would of course be in strict compliance with the social distancing requirements. So we plan to have some staff here at the office. We hope the board and everyone else participates online. But for the folks that, for example, want to drop off protest letters, that can be done here physically at the location. Staff will be here. You can speak either online or you can come to the office and we will walk you into a position where you can comment as well. So the recommendation is to adopt a resolution establishing a remote place for the district's Prop 218 public hearing, in addition to the hearing place at the district's administrative offices. And with that also, of course, adopting the resolution that legal counsel put together to manifest this.
Okay.
Thanks, Catherine.
Comments from the public? I don't see any hands waving or hear anybody. Let's take it back to the board. Scott?
I think my principal concern is about the small size of the boardroom. And as long as we have some kind of clear understanding of how many people actually fit in there, if we're doing proper distancing, and it's not just square feet, it's air circulation and the ability to get in and out without having to get too close to folks. So I don't imagine there's room for a whole lot of people in the room. I appreciate the thought being given to it. For one, you can count on me being remote at that time. So
Scott, maybe I should elaborate a little more on what we envision. I can't tell you if this is really what's going to happen, but what we have in mind right now is we really want everybody who can participate online to participate online. So hopefully the board is actually staying at home and logging on via computer. What we're planning really is we have to prepare for anything between 1 and 50 people or so showing up. So we're hoping that that's, of course, not the case, so that we don't have to handle that many folks. However, we plan to utilize the parking lot, meaning we let folks in one at a time. Parking lot will be marked with 6 to 10 foot spacers. We hopefully are able to put the big screen up outside so that the folks that are waiting outside can listen to the meeting and to listen to the comments, and then bring folks in one at a time. That's what we currently envision, and it's going to evolve according to the situation and according to the changes that we see going forward. But that's what we have in mind right now. So we don't want to have a crowd in the boardroom. We want to get folks in individually put them in front of a computer that is set up there, which is essentially the participation of the meeting, and allow them to comment that way.
Have you considered, rather than bringing them in, having that set up, say, on a podium out in the parking lot so people can step up to that?
It's definitely an option. We have, tents available, and at least one or two. I'm not sure if we can really go to a tent rental place right now readily, but we have some available. And it could simply move everything outside if that's the case, if we really needed to. But the location is the boardroom. It's agendized as the boardroom. That's why we've been thinking about it.
I shouldn't be surprised that you've been thinking it through this thoroughly. So thank you for that.
Good. Let me see. Rick appears to have dropped off. Peter Decker.
Yes.
Comments?
No, I have no comment.
Okay. Jim Harvey.
No, that sounds like a good plan. Thank you.
Okay. And I will note, to Scott's point, that we have two doors in the boardroom, one that goes outside to an exit that goes through out the fence, and the one that comes in through the front door. So we can just put arrows so people, kind of like in the one-way things at shopping at some stores now. So we will keep working on this. Hopefully, Scott Morrow, the San Mateo County Health officer, will have eased up on some of this to make it more easier for this to go on. But we have spent a whole lot of money on having this 218 hearing, and it would be a foolish waste of district resources, and also it would be an unfortunate, what's the word I'm looking for, omission to not have that hearing. The work does need to be done. These are projects that have to be done. As Clemens said earlier, unfortunately, the regulatory agencies and want us to be doing upgrades, and our equipment necessarily keeps breaking, or not necessarily, but unfortunately keeps breaking down and needing to be repaired. And the district's policy has always been to fix things before it gets majorly expensive to fix them. So we need to have this hearing. And I think we can do it. And hopefully then Christine can answer the questions about the time frame or timeline for making these decisions. And maybe we can find a good-hearted state or federal government that has some cheap money available for loans. So you've heard our comments, Clemens. So we'll move on to the, whoops, I lost my agenda. Sorry, to the next agenda item.
I'm going to ask to adopt the resolution.
I'm sorry, I missed that part. So do we have a motion, and we will have a roll call vote to concerning the remote location for June 4th, 2020 public hearing, RE Prop 218 rate increases COVID-19.
Okay, I make that motion.
Do we have a second? Thank you. Let's have a roll call vote. Thank you, Tracy.
Director Boyd?
Aye.
Director Decker?
Aye.
Director Harvey?
Aye.
Director Lohman?
Director Lohman is not, he got dropped off. So we'll have to just mark him as an abstention or an absent.
No, he's absent.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I'll say aye.
Okay, Director Slater Carter.
So is that all of us, Jim?
Yes.
Okay, I think it was unanimous of everyone. It was unanimous of the 4 who were present. Okay, so we're moving on to reports, Sewer Authority Mid-Coast Side meetings. We had our Finance Committee meeting, and you heard we're sending the budget on to the member agencies. Director Guy had a couple questions about the audits. One was what was expressed in the audit as an operating loss, and so she'd like more explanation on that in writing. And also there were bifurcations in the revenue statements, and it made no sense to her, the 3 categories. And so Keisha is going to be putting together an explanation on those as well. The budget that we sent forward has been reduced by $180,000. And so we will be looking at that closely. At the last meeting, there was a, on the general manager's report, there was a presentation of what Dan Child had been proposing for, and I will use my words, it was not in his report, additional force main light. He wants to increase the strength of the pumps, and it's somewhat being proposed as a option, instead of putting in the wet weather storage tanks, which we've already got one in. But I see Joel just sent a note. Thank you very much, Joel. I hope you can attend the Finance Committee meeting and future meetings. So it was interesting because there were some errors in Dan Child's report. He said that the standard best practices or adopted policy on the part of SAM was for a second force main, and that we had been going against that. Rick noted that that was in error to this policy SAM had taken years and years ago. And so we asked to have the report remain as Dan Child's report and not as an official document representing SAM. I will say that Deborah Ruddick was very upset by that. I still don't quite understand why, but so that proposal remains Dan Child's. We are waiting on bids. Just a minute, Greg. We are waiting on bids from for the expansion of the wet weather holding facilities in El Granada. And I have asked that we also find out how much would cost, maybe through an engineer's estimate, to expand the holding facility there to its full anticipated 600,000 gallons instead of staging it to do 400 to up to 400 and then do another 200 later when it's more expensive. So other than that, that was pretty much what's going on at SAM, except for the audits, which are, as Keishan said, are moving forward. And again, thanks to Keishan and George, Barbara Dye and the Finance Committee 2 years ago had put together a schedule for the budget to be able to be presented to the member agencies in a more reasonable time fashion. And thanks to Keishan and George, we are very close to meeting that schedule this year, and we will be able to make it a standard operating procedure for the years coming. And that thanks also goes to the member agency managers who have been looking at it and discussing it. So we're making a great deal of progress on both the audits and the budgets. And that's pretty much it for Sam. Midcoast Community Council, I haven't been watching their meetings.
Greg has his hand up.
Oh, Greg.
So in capital budgeting situations I've been in years past, every project we proposed, there was a description sheet. And Beverly Marshall had some of these in her 5-year plan a few years back. And it said, this is what we're going to do. This is the benefit. This is the cost. This is the impact on the financials. Is there such a description of this thing with the force main? Because I don't get the benefit. I do understand how the intertie pipeline system is integrated and the tanks to hold more capacity. I can see a benefit there to the system, but I don't understand how the force main thing is going to benefit. And I want to know what the write-up is that describes the cost benefit of that project.
You know, it hasn't been done. It has been represented as being equivalent in cost to the holding tanks, but in conversations with engineers, that argument does not stand up.
Well, I just want to see it in writing. I want somebody accountable for describing the cost benefit for something we're going to spend all this money on. And you know,
first of all, the SAM board has not approved it. And we have made a ethical commitment to the Regional Water Quality Control Board to put in the holding tanks. And I believe that it would be foolish for SAM to go down any other way of solving this wet weather problem until these are built and installed, so we can maintain our good details that need to be current.
Scott has something to say here.
Okay, Scott?
Greg, the notion, and this is something that you'll find that members of the SAM staff tend to have an opinion on, the notion is that operationally, from an engineering point of view, the situation that we try to manage, which is, you know, when it rains, we get heavy inundation, the system tends to fill up. And if it fills up too far, we spill. And these folks are out there in rough weather, trying to manage the system from a variety of control points, trying to avoid those spills. So they're on a righteous mission. And I don't disagree with them that if they had a dual force main system, that they might have some operational choices that they don't have if all they have is holding tanks. I'm sympathetic to that, but I'm also sympathetic to the Coastal Act. And I understand that adding a second force main through riparian habitat across waterways and in a way that would increase the capacity of the system to allow it to handle vastly more population would meet with some strong headwinds at the Commission, including possibly involvement from members of the public, maybe even by myself. So I have long been in direct and vocal opposition to a parallel force main where we can do holding tanks, which, let me point out that the proposed holding tank expansion that we is the voted upon, ratified policy of the SAM board and has been for quite some time.
Do you remember approximately what year that was, Scott?
When I came back to SAM. I stepped away from SAM for a little while. The parallel force main started rearing its ugly head again, and I came back. And
that was the year I came back on with you. It was about 10, 11, 12 years ago, actually.
Yeah, something like that. And it's been a while. I can't believe it's back. I don't know how many times we have to kill this beast, but the notion of having holding tanks wasn't something that these board members that you're talking to came up with. This happened when Carollo Engineering did a proposal for a project for SAM to deal with wet weather. This proposal came, I believe, in 1998.
Right.
I joined Montara shortly after that proposal, or maybe right when it came in. And being an earnest young board member, I'm reminded of the kind of things that you've done, Greg. I took this proposal, which was a big, thick thing, and I went through it page by page with a highlighter. I highlighted all the really good stuff until I got to this one point where I realized that this probably $20 million project that they were proposing, which had a dual force main in it, was all predicated on wet weather flow studies that really came down to sampling of a variety of points in the system. All of the samples but one were invalid because of various engineering problems. And I realized they were pinning $20 million on a single data point. It was the most absurd piece of engineering sophistry I've ever seen. And I made it my mission in life to go after that Carollo report and see it put where it belonged, on my shelf of the proposals that should never be voted for approval.
Okay,
Kishan
must have an inventory. Kishan must have a description of this proposed project that the public can see.
Oh,
well,
I have it next door to you, Greg.
That was presented, Greg. That was presented as part of the agenda on the manager's report at the last SAM board meeting. But there are no numbers.
Date?
When was it? Monday.
Oh, great.
All right. So
all right, I'll look at it. Thanks.
Let me see how quickly I can finish this thought, because it's got a long history. But I'll try to keep it. So when Carollo did this, we threw a fit. I threw a fit. Several people joined me. We pressed hard, and what we did at SAM was we went and got 3 engineering firms to do peer review on the Carollo report. And they came back with a series of recommendations, priority sorted from the most important to the least, but all of them were good. You know, it's like, I think it was 5 or 6 projects. And the topmost project was put in a holding tank in Montara in the old treatment facility tank. Empty it out, clean it up, add some concrete in the bottom, do some plumbing. And we did that. And we came in.
Sam did that.
Yeah. And it came in a little over the budget because we found that when it came time to decommission that tank, Montara had sent out a note, if you have anything to dump, come put it in our tank. Well, some of it we probably shouldn't have accepted. So we had some materials that we had to deal with, but we got it cleaned out. We put a bunch of concrete in the bottom to hold it in place because it would mostly sit empty and the hydraulic pressure would pop it out. So we did all that work. We got it in place. We had a ribbon cutting, and then we set out to starting to plan for the next project, which was a holding tank at the other end of that stretch down in El Granada. And that was, Sturm und Drang. Half Moon Bay wanted no part of doing anything that would make the system resilient to spills by putting in an inexpensive holding tank in El Granada. They wanted that dual force main. They wanted it bad.
And to this day.
And so they refused to participate. And so what we did at SAM, in conjunction with our good friends at El Granada, we agreed to do a project without Half Moon Bay. We cut the budget in half because that was about the money that we were going to spend anyway. And we sized it down. And so the project that's currently in El Granada is half the size of what it was supposed to be. The project on the books right now that the board has already approved is the completion of that initial phase 2. The one where the then mayor of Half Moon Bay complained about the ribbon cutting because we had
nice cookies.
We had printed cookies with the SAM logo on it that he ate. I watched him eat.
Yes, we did watch him. He enjoyed those cookies with great delight.
Yeah, he did.
And it's such a great image because Half Moon Bay has been enjoying the benefit of the holding tanks to the north of Half Moon Bay, which allows them during heavy storm events to put more water into the SAM facility than they are entitled to put. And that they would hold up this project, that's not really the outrage. The outrage is that they have yet to agree to put a holding facility in their community to hold back their excess flow.
Yeah, I understand all that. And
so
I remember Beverly Marshall testified to the use of the integrated system of the holding tanks a couple of years ago on video. I got that.
I would say to your point about a financial analysis of the supposed benefit of a dual force main, it's not worth the waste of money to put together a financial analysis for a policy decision which is on its face, given its history, abjectly inappropriate.
Yeah, okay, I'm not asking anybody to spend any money. I'll look at it.
Right. That would be good. And I think either Keishan and or Clemens, if you could find when that resolution was passed, I think it's very important because I think before we spend a penny on this new proposal, and this is the advantage of having a long-term, thank you, Scott, memory on the board.
Did you just call me old?
We would need to, before we spend any money on it, we would have to get a change of policy at the SAM board level and by all the member agencies.
Okay,
Great.
But I just want to register two contexts here. I think we have an education problem here because one of my interviews, I think it was early this week or late last week, was a very knowledgeable and involved Half Moon Bay resident. And he didn't understand the concept of the intertie pipeline system and how the expansion tanks were used. And he said, after I explained it, if I'd known that all along, I would have been so upset about this whole thing. He didn't know it. So I think there's an article that needs to be written.
Please.
The second piece of context here is that Half Moon Bay, I believe, admitted to a $3 million budget shortfall because of this crisis. And I think they lowballed it. I think they're in much bigger trouble. And I don't think spending any more money than we absolutely have to is anything that, I mean, I'm worried Half Moon Bay is going to be able to finance their half of SAM. Enough said.
George, don't roll your eyes, please. Peter, let's keep our fingers crossed they can, because they're 4 years ago, they refused to pay their part of the SAM budget for quite a few months. Yeah. So moving right along here, Rick's not online, so we will skip the CSDA and LAFCO reports. And now we're at our attorney, Christine Fitzgerald. You're on mute.
Sorry, it took me a minute to unmute. I do not have a report, President Slater-Carter. Thank you.
Okay. Director's reports. Do I see any hands waving? I don't see any hands waving.
I've used my time allotment.
I think we all have. General Manager's report.
Nothing in addition to the written report.
Okay. Future agendas. There's a list here of district water and sewer budgets, district water and sewer capital improvement programs, June 4th, public hearing on water system reliability charge and sewer service rate increases, June 4th, public hearing for master fee schedule adjustment, number 5, MWSD district general obligation bond refinancing, SAM budget, and MWSD defined benefit plan actuarial evaluation. And Rick asked me to put on the board on the agenda for the next meeting to have the board members forego their meeting fee of a whole $75 per meeting. So until the end of the COVID. I
actually do have a director comment.
Please.
Hey, Clemens, I don't want any more checks until this thing's over. And I don't want to accrue any checks during that time. Just, Clemens, so you know, I'm going to forego that myself. I don't need a board action. I'm just going to do that. I like that idea a lot.
Thank you, Scott, on behalf of all the ratepayers.
I think it would be good as a board discussion so that people can see that we feel their pain. Thank you, Greg. Moving right along then, we're going to recess this meeting and convene in closed session. So we'll take a 5-minute break and we will come back at 9:45.
So we're gonna stay attached. We'll stay.
Yeah. We can stay attached, and Jim, you and I can fool around with how to do the